Hey, John. Welcome back. Let's get right into the conversation about what's been going on, not only over the month of March. We'll talk about what happened there, but it's the end of the first quarter, so we can talk a little bit about that. There's obviously been a lot of challenges out there over the last 30 to 90 days in real estate, um, being driven obviously by what's happening economically out there. I don't think it's all doom and gloom, but I think it's something we definitely got to address and make sure we're educating people on what's going on. And there's been a few little silver linings out there that have happened or that we're seeing, and just a few things to consider for people out there that are thinking about selling or thinking that it's time or been sitting on the fence and waiting to make a move. It kind of leads into that conversation we had before about, buy and sell when it's right for you, not just when the
Yeah.
market tells you or when people tell you the market is. So, what do you think? What's been going on in your world, and what have you been thinking out there over the last 30, seen out there for the last 30 days?
Well, obviously, if you're watching the headlines and the news and everything, the stock markets on the heels of the tariff announcements yesterday are not doing super well, but they'll come back. I'm not too concerned on that front. I think the bigger stories though really are, and what people want to hear about is what's happening in local real estate. Um, right now, we have seen a bit of a pullback in number of sales, particularly in February and also in March. With respect in contrast to last year, so year over year numbers.
Yes,
March actually had a bit of growth in many communities when you look at it from a month over month perspective, but that is typical for this time of year. Um, the big pullback in the year over year numbers, though, I think is a little bit concerning when we look at the number of new listings coming on. But all that does is, like when we look at the stats, at no point does it ever say under the column of number of sales, do we see the number zero? Houses do sell.
absolutely.
They sell in every market, and it just means you have to be prepared. You've got to have a strategy. The house has to show well, and it's got to be priced right. And if you can check all those boxes, obviously, whether somebody's working with us or anybody else for that matter, I think there's still a reasonable chance of having success.
I
Uh,
agree. And just to what you're talking about, I mean, February obviously was a terrible month all around. I mean, I don't think anybody can
mhm.
deny that. Year over year, it was month over month, just based on where it is. March typically signifies the beginning of that spring market.
Yep.
We start to see a little bit of a change. We did have some, challenging weather throughout the month of March, not so much as the snow we had in February, but that threw a little bit of a loop into some people's plans. But we didn't see the bounce back in March that we saw the year before. We did see an increase over February. I think that's more of a consolation prize just based on how low February was. A heartbeat's better than no heartbeat kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, but year over year, overall, we were down. We were down significantly. The quarter year over year was down about 20, almost 28%, 27.7% reduction in overall sales. The one thing that I will say though is we've seen a fairly flat line on pricing. So while we've seen inventories grow, as you mentioned, upwards to 50% growth in inventory, we've seen days on market grow. We've seen the overall amount of months of inventory grow. We've seen sales kind of shrink. We have seen pricing stay flat.
Yeah.
So now that's across the board as an average. If you look at specific neighborhoods, obviously you're going to see some ups and downs there. But I think overall the market has sat flat on pricing, and I think that's a little bit of a mix between what's out there and what's selling. We're seeing more of those homes that are ready to move in. They've already been updated or renovated. They're getting a little more attention than the homes that have work to be done.
Right.
And people are willing to pay for that extra work having been done versus having to do it. That's kind of contributed a little bit. And then on the flip side, I think you're seeing sellers that are still saying, listen, I haven't bought another home yet. I don't have a gun to my head. I'm willing to wait it out and get my price. And
Yeah.
we've seen some of that happening as well. And all of that's contributed to that price kind of holding its own right now.
Yeah, absolutely. We haven't seen a big pullback in pricing month over month or year over year for that matter. Hopefully it stays that way. I mean, I kind of liken it to the game of blackjack at the casino. If you push with the dealer, it's kind of like winning, right?
Yeah.
So you didn't lose. Um, so in some level, or on some level, I think that's a win. And I think one of the things that at least I'm seeing in my experience over the last couple of months, and I've been really busy, despite the sales data kind of suggesting maybe the market hasn't been. But what I'm seeing a lot of is that good property, as you pointed out, the stuff that looks good, prepared well, but also where there's scarcity. So if there isn't a lot of competition for that property, chances are it's not going to take long to sell it. If you're looking at a neighborhood where maybe there's an abundance of a particular, whatever, a townhome or detached, whatever you're looking for, condo, if there's a lot of options available, and we've been seeing this, like, take the Toronto condo market, for
Yeah.
example. It's flooded with inventory, right? So where there's a lot of choice for a buyer, well, A, that's an opportunity for that buyer. Maybe they've got a bit of leverage. But it also means I think the seller has to maybe go that extra mile in making theirs stand out from the competition. And as I said earlier, sales aren't zero. We're still selling houses.
No, I agree. And
So
I mean, if we've seen that across the board, maybe not as much as we like, but I look at certain neighborhoods. I look at my own neighborhood here, Joshua Creek area. Um, Joshua Creek has suffered for the last year in slow sales. In the last 45, 50 days, we've had only two sales of detached homes, and we're sitting on 29 houses on the market today.
wow.
But what I will say is those 29 homes that are sitting out there, they're holding fairly tight on their pricing. We haven't
Mhm.
seen that reduction. But at the same time, the ones that have sold, they have been updated. They've got new flooring, they've got new paint on the walls, they've got a new kitchen, bathrooms have been done. And when I look at the inventory that's sitting out there, a lot of those homes, they're still sitting on an original kitchen. There's nothing fancy done with their landscaping. They've got the original hardwood that went in, an original travertine tile, stuff like that that's been there for 20 years,
Yeah.
unfinished basements. There's just a lot of that inventory out there like that. So people have a lot to choose from. And if they're going to spend $150,000 more, they're going to lean towards buying those homes that have the things already done. Right. A lot of people just
Oh,
don't want to go
absolutely.
through the renovation process while they're trying to make a move. It's overwhelming for a lot of people. So
And frankly, a lot of people don't have the skill set to do that work themselves. They don't want to live through the renovation, and maybe they don't have the budget for it. It's a lot
yeah.
easier when all of you don't have to have additional funds for a renovation in on top of your down payment and your purchase
Well,
price.
John, that's not to say that everybody should run out there and redo their houses and spend, hundreds of thousands of dollars renovating their houses.
No,
It's just
absolutely
a
not.
circumstance of where we are today. Um,
And it'll
so
turn. It'll turn. I have every confidence in that.
I agree.
It's been a bit soft the last little while. And obviously anytime, whatever the turmoil is, look at, go back a few years to COVID or, other
Mhm.
points in time, right? When there's big changes out there, and we're seeing that particularly south of the border, which is impacting trade worldwide, like it's natural, no matter who you are. You're going to kind of maybe push pause, step back, figure out the lay of the land or the new lay of the land and come back. I say all the time, demand doesn't go away, it just parks.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. So
the those buyers who were thinking and maybe have pushed pause, they're still going to buy. They're just maybe waiting a month or two or whatever.
absolutely. And there'll still be demand out there in the future. And I mean, it's
Well, there will. And the nice thing is we've had a number of rate cuts lately, and I think we've had what, seven now. We've got another one coming up next week, a rate announcement next week.
great announcement. So that'll
See
be an interesting one for sure, whatever
see
they
what
go
they
along with.
do.
Yeah.
We had carbon taxes on consumer products eliminated as of April 1st. So
And we're 3 weeks away from an election.
yeah, like there's a lot of moving parts here.
Absolutely. I think the conversation we're having in 30 days from now, when we look back on April, regardless of where the numbers are, we're going to be looking at it from the perspective of a new government in place, one way or the other, or maybe the same government, but we'll see what happens there. But we're going to see a change on that side. And in the world of what's been going on south of the border, a lot's going to happen in 30 days. I mean, a lot's happened in 60 days. The
Well,
next
I
30,
think
after the announcements that we've seen, there's going to be a lot more to come.
well, I think there will be. I mean, he makes a bunch of announcements and then but they're not effective for a few days, and he says he's not willing to negotiate, but then in the next breath he says he is, right? So
Yeah. And in between all of
so
that, he's changed four different things.
so what's that going to look like? Who knows? Will we have more uncertainty in 30 days? Maybe. Will we have more clarity? Hopefully. Um, but one thing for sure, we'll have a new government in Canada. Um, we'll see what the next rate announcement looks like. I think there's a lot of arguments that make the case for maybe Bank of Canada holding.
Yep.
But at the same time,
Well,
they're
inflation
not
was
going to
up.
tip their hand until they make their announcement, right? So
Absolutely. But if you look at that, inflation was back up to 2.6%. They're obviously going to want to try and cool that down, so that may lead to a possible hold. We'll see what happens. All
We'll
this
see.
tariff stuff
Yeah,
obviously is going to have an impact. But what does that mean if they hit the pause button on that? Does that mean people look at it and say, okay, we're now back down on the bottom. Let's make a move before it starts heading back up, especially if
maybe.
inflation and tariffs.
I
Who
think one
knows?
thing that kind of contributes to lower inflation is the removal of the carbon tax on
Yeah,
consumer products. From April 1st to the Bank of Canada announcement next week, I don't think you're going to see a significant change in the inflation figure.
yeah.
It might take longer for that to play out, but we'll see.
Well, we won't even hear about that till sometime in May. But what I will say, John, is, and you make this point quite often, is if you buy and sell in the same market under the same conditions,
Yeah,
you know, typically you're not exposed as much. So, people that are out there considering, people that have been sitting back on the fence waiting for that market to turn, I think we both think along the same lines. And I think if you ask most realtors, economists, or anything else, we're not going to see a big spike in housing prices over the next, I'm going to put out there to say even the next couple of years, are we going to see a big growth in pricing? I think we're going to be
I
pretty
would agree.
stagnant. I'm quite happy to see the prices have held where they are. I don't think we're going to see a lot of drop. I think they're going to fluctuate right around where they are, give or take a few points up or down. But we're not going to see that explosion where houses are going to go back up another 5, 10%.
Yeah.
So people that have been sitting on the sidelines waiting, what this inventory growth is telling me is that those people are starting to see that as well and say, you know what, let's just make that move. Because one of the things that has come out recently, and it's driven more by NAR in the US versus Canada, but what has come more prevalent is baby boomers have once again become the number one driver of the housing market. Baby boomers taken over millennials in home sales. So, they never thought that was going to happen again. Millennials were hitting that point where they were buying into the market and they had blown every other
Yeah.
category generation out of the water in the amount of people within that generation acquiring homes. Now we've gone back to baby boomers taking over that top spot again. That tells me they're looking at it and saying enough is enough. We've waited for 2 years. Our price hasn't gone back up to 2022. Let's just get this done. We can go buy the house we want for a good price. We're going to make out good on ours, and let's just stop kicking the can down the road and make a move. And that's what's
No.
driving a 52% growth in inventory.
Well, just what I was going to say is with that inventory growth, there's opportunity. So now, chances are that that ideal home, whatever it is they're looking for, is potentially available, and they may not have as much, if any, competition.
Yeah,
Whereas in hotter markets, what it was like, 3, 4, 5, 10 offers on a house,
yeah.
and a lot of disappointed people because they didn't get the one they wanted.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think we're going to continue to see that happen. I encourage anybody that is considering, I'm not telling people to run out because you or I or anybody else tells them, run and buy and sell a house now, but take the time to look at your circumstance and do the math yourself. And is this the time, or does it make sense right now, or does it make sense to continue to hold? Is what we're looking for out there, and are we going to get what we want for our home in this market? And where's our life going to be if we make this change versus not making this change? Just take the time to make the simple calculations and decide if it's the right time for you or not.
Well, it's a
And
good
you
time.
know,
Frankly, it's a great time, I think, for people if they are having any of these thoughts
well,
to,
you and I know that, or
to
believe that at least.
yeah,
But I mean, each
but to
individual has
connect,
to come to that determination for themselves.
but to connect with their realtor, whoever that may be, or
Absolutely.
whoever, and start having those conversations because the reality is that, it may be a good opportunity for some. But
Yeah, I
everybody's
agree.
case is different and they got to do what's right for them.
Well, I do have some clients that are out there that have been sitting and holding and waiting for the market, and I'm not telling them to go on the market. I'm not saying that, it's going to come back in the future, but what I'm telling them is it's as good a time as any for you to make a decision because if you're going to wait another couple of years, none of us have a crystal ball to see what's going to happen.
No.
But with the protectionism going on out of the US and the impacts it's going to have on the global economy, it's going to limit the ability to grow the housing prices in Canada. It's just, with immigration now being cut down, every other factor we have going on, I can't see where we're going to get that growth coming from.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. Well, as we've pointed out, there's a lot to keep an eye on the next few weeks.
Absolutely.
I'm looking forward to our next video because I think there'll be a hell of a lot to talk about.
We'll have a new government and we'll see what that is and what that looks like and what our next couple of years are going to look like from that perspective. And who knows what Trump's going to do, man. There'll be more to talk about there too. So,
Who knows? All
Absolutely.
right. Well, till then, happy selling and we'll talk soon.
Sounds good. We'll talk soon. All the best.
All right. See ya.
Bye.